Hey Carmichaels, this is Leah Carmical Hargrove. Thanks for coming back for the second part of this interview series with Andy Carmichael of Carmichael, Chief Richard's son, who is answering our questions from the estate as we speak. If you missed the first section, I was talking to Andy about clan gatherings, international gatherings, and how COVID's affected the one that was supposed to be happening this year and our celebrations together in Bauge, and rescheduling for next year and what that looks like and what clan gatherings are like for those of us who have never been. In this section, we're going to talk about the history of the estate and the role that Richard's family and Andy's family has played over time on the estate and what things will look like going forward. So with that, Andy, thank you so much for answering this next round of questions for us. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your family's story on the estate. So when we've talked before, you've said that your family inherited this historic estate and there was no user's manual. What was that like? What have the past 30 to 40 years been like on the estate?
Yeah, it's been challenging to say the least. At certain points, frustrating also. But it's funny. My father made a promise to his predecessor that he would come back from wherever he was to take over the clan lands and become clan chief. And he lived to this promise, and we did come back. But what we found was that there was no user manual, as you say, that had been left. There were lots of historical records, but basic things like where do the water pipes run from one property to another. How were these buildings built and what's the structure of them? There's no information on any of this. So, every year that has gone by, we've been learning new things about this land that we didn't know. New things about the historical embedded environment that is in amongst trees, in amongst the agricultural land, and building up our own knowledge, but we didn't have anyone to ask. And that's been really challenging at times, especially when things don't go quite how you want them to. And you've got to try and solve a problem, but you don't really, the problem involves going through a number of different scenarios to get to the answer rather than looking in the book to see what should be done. So yeah, it can be challenging. It can be very rewarding, and I hope that I can continue to build this knowledge base and hand it down to my children so that they perhaps have less of the troubles that my father had when he arrived back here in 1980.
Yeah, your dad certainly has a lot of sticking power. I know I was really impressed when I visited the estate almost a decade ago how much economic activity there was going on at the estate. I saw mutton, I saw venison, and of course the animals that produce those things, and that wasn't all that was going on that I saw. What was the timeline of how those economic activities came to be? What was in place when you got there, and what was the journey to everything that's being produced on the estate now?
Yeah, sure. So when we came back in 1980, most of the farmland was tenanted out. So it was they had effectively people renting farmland in small parcels. And a lot of the old buildings on the estate had tenants in them who were paying minimal rent or no rent at all. So they were perhaps family of someone who had worked for the estate at some point, and they'd had a right in perpetuity to occupy the building because the estate had been looking after their family for generations. So there was very little actual income on the estate. There was very little to support any activity, a commercial activity at all. So it kind of happened naturally over the course of 30 years. But as people died and left the properties, the holiday cottages, rather than putting more workers into these cottages, we did them up into self-catering holiday lets. And what that allowed us to do was to open the doors to have Carmichaels and other visitors from all over the world come and enjoy the beautiful land that we have, stay in a historic property, and help us to keep the heat and the lights on, and help them from stop them from falling down around their ears, because these buildings are 250, 300 years old. So if no one lives in them, then they will quickly deteriorate. So we started with Butler's Cottage in 1981, I think it was, and there'll be Clan members who are watching this who probably stayed in Butler's Cottage in the 1980s. And we've now got 13 cottages. So we have the Butler's Cottage, the laundry, the maid's house, the coachman's house, and they're all unique in their own way, really special and unique places to stay. So that's one side of the business, and that's helped to sort of just keep some revenue coming in, which can help us to continue to maintain these buildings and keep them alive. The second thing is that a lot of these tenant farmers didn't renew their tenancy. So whether it was their children who didn't want to farm, or whether the land parcels were just too small as the modern agriculture came in, we went through a situation where many of the tenants just were not renewing anymore. So we decided to take those farmland back in hand and begin farming ourselves, trying to cultivate the lands that our ancestors have been cultivating for years. So we started farming cattle for beef, sheep, for lamb, and we also introduced red deer for the venison as well. And 30, 40 years, we have continued to do this, and we grow our own barley to bed the animals in the winter with the straw. We feed them the barley grain, and we also grow our own grass to feed them on in the winter, because obviously nothing grows here in the winter, so we need to stockpile. So now we have this closed farming system where all our animals are born, reared, fattened, butchered, and slaughtered on our land here, and the majority of what they eat is grown on the land as well. So it's almost like a sort of single malt product that we have of Carmichael meat. And we sell that online, and we take it to farmers markets across the Central Belt. So it's never going to make us huge amounts of money selling venison burgers in outside Edinburgh Castle, but it does put the land to good use. It supports our agricultural staff here, who are local families who have worked the estate for generations. And, it really puts the land to good use and keeps it cultivated and alive for the.
The land is beautiful. It's gorgeous over there in the borders. It really helped me when I visited as a child of the diaspora to see that it wasn't just a historical relic that I was visiting. It was living, breathing, active. It was being worked. It belonged to families, and people got their livelihoods from it. And it helped me situate myself with my ancestors who probably lived and worked on the land.
It's a funny thing, Leah, because it's a careful blend between agriculture, tourism, clan heritage, and sometimes it's like a balancing act, trying to balance all these really quite different pieces into our clan lands, our business, and our lives. And I guess one of the things about being here and living here is that it's 24/7. The only way to really get a break is to leave, because there's always something going on in one area of the business.
It really sounds 24/7. sounds a lot like the ranchers that I live near here in North Dakota, just all hands on deck all the time. I'm curious to know, given that Carmichaels all trace ourselves back to this piece of land, or most Carmichaels trace themselves back to this land in this area, and it means a lot to us more than just a spot on the map, but this living, breathing place where our ancestors and our stories came from. How can we, whether we're in the UK or spread across the globe, support the land and help care for it?
All I would say is, like, join the clan, attend the meetups where in the United States that you can, which are close to you, connect with your fellow Carmichaels wherever possible. And if you can, sign up to a clan gathering, come to Scotland and stay in one of the historic properties and put your walking boots on and have a walk around and go and stand on Kirk Hill where the source of the name is. It's absolutely majestic up there. The wind in the old beech trees, there's just a certain type of presence when you get up there. So, really try and connect with your heritage as much as you can. And I can't recommend enough joining us in one of these clan occasions. There's nothing better than being with a whole group of Carmichaels all dressed in tartan, marching through the streets of Edinburgh or Stirling or the military tattoo, all of things which we've done. Or, for example, in the year 2000, my father took the clan gathering to Bauge, and they toured around St. Michael's Mount and visited the sites together on a clan family holiday in the millennium. So, there's tons of events that are going on. Get involved in them. Talk to other Carmichaels, and this all helps to support us and what we're doing here, trying to keep the source of the name going for everyone.
Thank you, Andy, for that answer. And thank you and your dad and everybody in your family and the staff at Carmichael Estate for all you're doing. It's amazing to see everything going on at the estate, and I know it makes not just me, but Carmichaels all over the world very, very proud of what's going on and eager to visit again soon. We'll pause here for our listeners and continue with our third and final section of our interview with Andy. Click the link below to follow, and thank you so much for watching so far.